All right, let's talk about orchids. You know the story, right? You bring home this absolutely gorgeous plant from the store, and then, well, you watch it mysteriously just wither away. If that sounds familiar, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the biggest puzzles for plant lovers. Let's get to the root of the problem, pun intended, and figure out what these incredible plants actually need to thrive. So, let's just kick things off with this. It sounds super dramatic, I know, but it's also 100% true. Planting an orchid in regular houseplant soil is an instant death sentence. Seriously, this one single mistake is probably the #1 reason so many orchids meet a sad end in our homes. And you know what? Understanding why it's such a disaster is the key. It's how we're going to unlock the secret to keeping them happy and blooming. Okay, so section 1, the fatal mistake. Before we even get to the right way to do things, we have to talk about the wrong way. We need to understand why our most basic, most intuitive instinct, it's a plant, put it in soil, is just so catastrophically wrong for orchids. The really tricky thing here, the part that gets everybody, is how sneaky this whole process is. When you put that orchid in soil, the damage to the roots, it starts almost immediately. But here's the catch. Those thick, waxy leaves are amazing at storing water. So for weeks, the plant can look perfectly fine, totally healthy. But by the time you actually see the leaves start to wilt and droop, it's often way too late. It's what people call a ghost plant. It looks like a plant, but underneath, there's just no living root system left to save it. All right, an acrobat in the air. To really get this, we have to completely shift how we think about these plants. So let's take a little mental trip. Forget the garden center, forget your living room, and let's go to the lush, humid, tropical canopies of Southeast Asia, because that's where these guys came from. And this right here, this is the whole secret. Most of the orchids you buy in a store are something called epiphytes. What does that mean? It means they don't grow in the ground at all. In the wild, they're what you might call atmospheric acrobats. Their roots are designed for one thing, to cling to the side of a tree, totally exposed to the air, the wind, and those sudden tropical rainstorms. They are, quite literally, air plants. So you're probably wondering, how on earth do these exposed roots even work? Well, the secret is this amazing, almost magical tissue called the velamen radicum. It's this silvery, multi-layered sheath of dead cells that covers the roots. Think of it like a high-tech biological sponge. When it rains, bam, it soaks up water like crazy in just a few seconds. But then, when things dry out, it turns white and acts like a shield, protecting the living root inside from the sun, while, and this is the crucial part, still letting it breathe. Okay, so now that we know these roots are designed for air, let's revisit what happens when we bury them in soil. It's a full-on catastrophe in 3 quick steps. First up, compression. All those fine soil particles just collapse around the roots, squeezing out every last one of those vital air pockets. Then comes step 2, waterlogging. The soil just holds on to way too much water, turning the pot into a stagnant swamp. And finally, the fatal blow, anoxia. The roots are totally starved of oxygen. They literally suffocate and begin to rot. All right, this brings us to part 3, the great potting debate. So if soil is a total no-go, then what do we use? This question is the source of a huge debate in the orchid community, a battle that has been going on for years. What is the absolute best stuff to use to mimic that life on a tree branch? Well, it really boils down to 2 main contenders. In one corner, you've got fir bark. We can think of this as the traditionalist choice. It's all about structure and airflow. And in the other corner, you have sphagnum moss, the hydration specialist. This stuff is famous for its incredible ability to hold on to water. Both sides have super passionate fans, and honestly, they both make really good points. Okay, let's talk about the most obvious difference, how they handle water. Bark gives you amazing drainage. Water pretty much just runs right through it, which means it's almost impossible to overwater your orchid. This is perfect if you're an enthusiastic waterer. Moss is the complete opposite. It can hold something like 20 times its own weight in water. It's like a little reservoir for the roots. This makes it a total lifesaver for those of us who are maybe a little forgetful. But this debate isn't just about water. When you look at the chemical properties, they're polar opposites. Bark, as it breaks down, has these little microbes that actually steal nitrogen away from your fertilizer. It's a thing called nitrogen drawdown. So you have to fertilize differently. Sphagnum moss, on the other hand, is great at holding onto nutrients and giving them to the plant. The only downside, over time, it can get a little too acidic. So that brings us to the big finale, your ultimate orchid mix. So who wins the debate, bark or moss? Well, the answer is Neither of them. Or maybe both of them. The truth is, there's no single perfect orchid mix for everyone. The absolute most important thing to understand is that the right choice depends completely on you, your habits, and your home. Which leads us to probably the most important question I'm going to ask you today. So what kind of grower are you? Seriously, take a second and be honest with yourself. Are you the person who shows your love for plants by watering them constantly? Or are you maybe a super busy professional who sometimes forgets for a week or two? This little table here should make it pretty simple. Look, if you're that overwaterer, bark is your best friend. It's forgiving and it'll save your plant from you. If you're the busy professional, sphagnum moss is the way to go. And of course, your environment makes a huge difference. If you live in a really dry apartment with the AC blasting, moss will help keep things humid. But if you have a humid greenhouse, you're going to want the fast-drying bark. But what if you don't want to choose? Well, there's a modern solution that a lot of experts are using now, the hybrid mix. It's basically a 70-30 split. Use mostly bark, about 70%, for that great structure and airflow, and then you mix in a little bit of moss, maybe 30%, to create little pockets of humidity. It really is the best of both worlds. And that brings us to this final idea, which I think is just so powerful. This quote completely changes the way you should think about potting an orchid. We do not pot orchids to give them food from the earth. We pot them to hold them steady while they breathe. We're not trying to plant it to get nutrients from the soil. All we're doing is using the pot and the mix to hold the plant upright so its roots can do what they were born to do, which is to breathe. So the real question isn't about what you feed your orchid. It's all about how you let it breathe. The next time you look at that beautiful plant on your windowsill, I really hope you see it a little differently. The secret to making it happy isn't about what you're feeding it. It's about giving it the freedom to breathe. It's all about letting its roots feel the air. Thanks so much for joining me.